SKO Nation, something is stirring in Minnesota, and it feels like we're standing at the edge of a storm that could define the entire season. Every headline, every practice report, every snap in these August games, it's all building toward a September showdown at Soldier Field. And while the rest of the league is focused on their stars and storylines, here in Minnesota, we're living a drama that no scriptwriter could have imagined. Think about it. Just 1 year ago, a defensive lineman was playing in the UFL, completely off the radar of NFL scouts. Today, he's the talk of joint practices, earning the respect of opponents and teammates alike. That's not just a story, it's proof that diamonds can be found in the rough, and sometimes the biggest treasures come from the most unlikely places. But it doesn't stop there. On the offensive side, a quarterback nobody expected is beginning to look like he belongs. Not just as a camp arm, not just as a developmental project, but as someone who could legitimately change the shape of the depth chart. A rookie UDFA stepping into the spotlight with poise, anticipation, and confidence that has coaches whispering about possibilities nobody thought realistic. And then there's the other side of preseason, the heartbreak, the struggles, the players who are losing ground when every rep is supposed to be their lifeline. Names we thought were safe are suddenly on the bubble. Jobs are being lost before our eyes. Dreams are slipping away. It's the cruelest part of football, but also the rawest, the most real. Add in the chaos at wide receiver, suspensions, injuries, uncertainty, and suddenly the conversation shifts again. Do you trust a veteran return man to carry the load until reinforcements arrive? Do you gamble on a familiar star, a legend of the game, even if his prime might be behind him? These are the decisions that will shape September, October, and beyond. So, SKO Nation, I ask you, are you ready for this ride? Because the next few minutes aren't just about stats and names. They're about resilience, redemption, risk, and belief. They're about a team trying to find its identity in the middle of chaos. They're about stories that remind us why we bleed purple. Stay locked in. The first revelation is coming, and it's not about a superstar. It's about a hidden gem who fought his way from the shadows into the heart of Brian Flores' defense. And he might just be the breakthrough Minnesota has been waiting for. Every once in a while, SKO Nation, a story comes along that reminds us why we love this game so much. Not because of first-round draft picks or million-dollar contracts, but because of the long shots. The players who claw their way from obscurity into the spotlight. And right now, that story in Minnesota has a name, Jaylen Redmond. A year ago, he wasn't even on the radar. He wasn't suiting up at US Bank Stadium or preparing for an NFL training camp. He was battling in the UFL, wearing an Arlington Renegades uniform, fighting just to prove he still belonged in professional football. When the Vikings signed him in June of 2024, after minicamp, as the 90th man on the roster, it barely registered. Just another body for camp, most thought. But Redmond had other plans. From the very start, his impact was undeniable. Explosiveness off the line, penetration into the backfield, a motor that refused to quit. By the end of camp last year, he wasn't just surviving, he was making noise, forcing his way into a roster spot. And when the season came, he flashed. 1 sack, 6 tackles for loss, 18 total tackles. Numbers that don't leap off the page until you remember the context. This was an undrafted player fresh out of spring football, carving out meaningful snaps in an NFL defense. Fast forward to this summer, and Redmond isn't just hanging on, he's turning heads. Patriots beat writers at joint practices couldn't stop asking, who's 61? He's a dude. Teammates like Jonathan Greenard are calling him a dog, someone who brings edge, toughness, and energy every single rep. And when veterans start vouching for you publicly, that means something. That means you've earned respect. But here's the key. Redmond doesn't need to be a starter. With Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave anchoring the defensive line, Minnesota is loaded with talent. What Redmond provides is depth that doesn't drop off, a rotational presence that keeps the pressure constant. Think about it. When those big names need a breather, defenses usually exhale. Not with Redmond. He crashes the line, disrupts plays, and makes sure offenses never feel safe. That's invaluable. And don't overlook Brian Flores' role in all of this. His defense thrives on aggression, penetration, and chaos. He doesn't want players who just hold the line. He wants disruptors. Redmond fits that mold perfectly. He's not just filling space, he's attacking. He's blowing up plays before they even develop. And in a scheme like this, that's worth gold. Of course, the journey hasn't been easy. Injuries at Oklahoma hurt his draft stock, making him a forgotten man when talent alone suggested he should have been picked. But that's the beauty of his story. He didn't quit. He didn't let the label of undrafted define him. He worked, he fought, and now he's on the verge of becoming a crucial piece of his Vikings defense. So here's the question, SKL Nation, what's more dangerous than a superstar? A hungry underdog who has nothing to lose and everything to prove. That's Jaylen Redmond. And as this season unfolds, don't be surprised if his name becomes one of the most important on this roster. Not because of hype, but because of impact. And the best part, he's not the only underdog making waves in Minnesota. Because while Redmond is crashing through offensive lines, there's another story on the other side of the ball of a quarterback nobody expected to matter, suddenly making the entire NFL take notice. His name is Max Brosmer, and his rise might just be the most shocking development of all. Every training camp has its surprises. Every preseason has that one name nobody expected to matter, suddenly turning into the talk of the town. But what's happening in Minnesota right now isn't just a nice little story. It's bigger. It's louder. It's a quarterback, yes, a quarterback, who entered camp as an undrafted rookie free agent and is now making a legitimate push to climb the depth chart. His name is Max Brosmer, and Skull Nation, the buzz is real. Let's be honest, undrafted quarterbacks aren't supposed to make waves. Most of them are lucky just to get a practice squad spot. They're there to throw passes in camp, maybe stick around as a scout team arm, and then vanish before anyone remembers their number. But Brosmer? He's rewriting the rules. In the preseason clash against the New England Patriots, he didn't just manage the game, he commanded it. An entire half of football behind a shaky offensive line without Jefferson, Addison, or Hawkinson to lean on. And yet he showed poise beyond his years, quick reads, anticipation, delivering the ball before receivers even broke their roots. Kevin O'Connell himself went on the broadcast mid-game and praised Brosmer's fast eyes and his rare ability to avoid putting the ball in harm's way. After the game, the praise only grew louder. That anticipation has always been Brosmer's calling card. At the University of Minnesota, he built a reputation for throwing receivers open, not waiting for them to already be there. In the NFL, that's the difference between success and failure. And in O'Connell's system, built on timing, precision, and rhythm, it's the perfect fit. That's why so many are beginning to whisper the unthinkable. Brosmer isn't just gonna make the roster. He might actually become QB2. It sounds crazy, right? A rookie UDFA backing up Kirk Cousins or whoever leads the offense into week 1. But it's not unprecedented. Just last season, Tyson Bagent, an undrafted kid out of Division II Shepherd, started 4 games for the Bears. When the opportunity came, he was ready. And Brosmer has that same energy, that same quiet confidence that says, why not me? Now, let's be fair. The quarterback competition in Minnesota is far from over. Sam Howell, Brett Rypien, and Brosmer are all fighting for positioning. O'Connell has made it clear he wants to see more, to evaluate every option. But there's no denying that Brosmer is forcing the issue. He's putting throws on tape that make coaches sit up in their chairs. He's winning respect in the locker room. And he's giving fans a reason to believe in something fresh, something unexpected. Think about the bigger picture, SKL Nation. In a camp clouded by injuries at wide receiver, uncertainty at running back, and questions about depth across the board, what's the one thing this team desperately needs? Hope, momentum, a spark that says, we've got more weapons than anyone thought. Brosmer is becoming that spark. He's not just another camp arm. He's proof that Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's eye for talent extends even to the most overlooked corners of the draft process. And let's be real, every fan loves an underdog story. Every fan loves the idea that a kid nobody believed in suddenly becomes the heartbeat of a team. Brosmer might not be ready for stardom yet, but he's planting the seeds. And in Minnesota, where quarterback play has defined so many seasons of heartbreak and hope, that matters more than you think. So keep your eyes on number 12, SKL Nation. Because while veterans fight for contracts and rookies battle for snaps, Max Brosmer is quietly rewriting his own future. And if he keeps this up, the Vikings quarterback room could look very different by the time September arrives. But not every story in camp is about hope. Some are about struggle. Some are about players losing ground. missing their chance, watching their dream slip away. And that's exactly what we saw in the latest preseason loss, where a couple of Vikings veterans put their jobs in jeopardy. For every breakout star of training camp, there's another side to the story. The players who are slipping, who are losing their grip on the roster, who are watching their dream begin to fade right before their eyes. And for the Vikings this preseason, two names stand out above the rest: Sam Howell and Ty Chandler. Let's start under center. A week ago, Howell looked like he was climbing the ladder. He flashed in the opener, made a case that maybe, just maybe, he could push for the backup job. But then came New England. 1 completion, 5 attempts, a passer rating of 0.00. It's hard to imagine a stat line uglier than that for a quarterback fighting for his life. Now, yes, the context matter. He was playing behind the second-team offensive line. His receivers weren't household names, and he was staring down the Patriots' starting defense. But excuses don't change what happened. Howell wasn't just ineffective, he was reckless. On one play, trapped in the pocket, he tried to sling the ball away while going down. Instead of living to fight another down, he gift-wrapped it to a defender. That kind of decision is what drives coaches crazy. Take the sack. Punt the football. Don't compound one mistake with another. And in a competition where every throw counts, Howell put the worst kind of tape out there. Meanwhile, Brett Rypien and Max Brosmer didn't light the world on fire, but they avoided disaster. They showed poise. They kept the offense afloat. Howell, he let the moment slip. And in this league, momentum matters. It can define your standing in a room that's already crowded. For a quarterback who once had a chance to be the heir apparent in Washington, the fall feels steep. In Minnesota, it might mean the end of the line. Now let's talk about Ty Chandler. Drafted back in 2022, Chandler was supposed to be the next man up in the Vikings backfield. Explosive speed, versatility, a chance to be the change of pace runner who could punish tired defenses. But his preseason has been brutal. 8 carries, 17 yards. That's it. No spark, no burst, no impact. And while he's been stumbling, his competition has been thriving. Enter Xavier Scott. Every touch, every rep, every opportunity, Scott has been making plays. In contrast, Chandler looks stuck. Add in the fact that Kevin O'Connell has publicly questioned his pass protection, and the picture becomes grim. Running backs who can't protect the quarterback don't last in today's NFL. And to make matters worse, the kick return job? That used to be Chandler's safety net. Not anymore. Scott has been pushing for that role too, leaving Chandler without a foothold. This is the cruel truth of preseason football. It doesn't care about draft status. It doesn't care about what you were supposed to be. It only cares about performance in the here and now. Howell and Chandler aren't out of chances yet, but they're teetering on the edge. The next 2 weeks could decide everything for them. A roster spot, a career, a dream, and Skull Nation. That's what makes August so raw, so gripping. For every Max Brosmer, there's a Sam Howell. For every Jaylen Redmond, there's a Ty Chandler. Hope and heartbreak walk side by side in camp, and the line between them is razor thin. So while the spotlight shines on the rising stars, don't forget the players on the other side of the coin. Because sometimes the hardest stories to watch are the ones about players falling short. And yet for Minnesota, those struggles only underscore their urgency. The roster isn't just about cutting, it's about building. It's about finding answers. And right now, with uncertainty at wide receiver and injuries piling up, the Vikings are still searching. Which brings us to the next storyline. Because when your receiver room is in chaos, Addison suspended, Moore out for the year, Jefferson managing a tendon scare, you can't just hope it fixes itself. You need reinforcements. And sometimes the answer isn't a superstar. Sometimes it's a veteran return man who knows the system, knows the role, and can provide stability when you need it most. That's where Powell enters the conversation. When a position group is in chaos, sometimes the best solution isn't flashy. Sometimes it's not about star power or headlines. It's about trust, reliability, and a steady hand that can buy time until reinforcements arrive. And right now, Skull Nation, that's exactly what the Minnesota Vikings may need at wide receiver. Because while everyone wants to dream about big names, the reality is simple. With Jordan Addison suspended, Rondale Moore out for the season with a devastating knee injury, Jalen Naylor nursing a hand issue, and Justin Jefferson still managing attendance scare, this team cannot afford to gamble on wishful thinking. They need stability, and that's where Brandon Powell enters the conversation. Powell isn't going to wow you with jaw-dropping stats. He isn't going to line up and single-handedly dominate a defense. At nearly 30 years old, his resume has never been about being a WR1 or even WR2. But what he does bring is exactly what this roster might need in early September. Experience, familiarity, and versatility. He knows Kevin O'Connell's system. He's been here before. He understands the language, the concepts, and the expectations. That means no learning curve, no adjustment period, no risk of being overwhelmed by the playbook. Drop him in, and he can contribute immediately. And don't underestimate his value as a return man. Special teams matter, especially in close games early in the season when every yard counts. Powell has proven he can handle those duties, giving Minnesota a reliable option while younger players find their footing. It's not glamorous, but it's critical. Field position wins games, and Powell has the ability to tilt that battle in the Vikings' favor. Now let's zoom out for a second. With Addison due back after 3 games and Jefferson expected to regain full form, Minnesota doesn't need a superstar signing at receiver. What they need is someone to hold the line, to steady the ship until their weapons return. A short-term solution who won't demand the spotlight but will quietly do his job. Powell is tailor-made for that role, and in a locker room that's already been hit with uncertainty, his presence could also bring leadership. Younger receivers like Miles Price are flashing potential, but do you want to throw them into the fire against starting NFL defenses in September without a safety net? Powell gives them room to grow. He allows O'Connell to rotate, to mix roles, to avoid burning out young talent too quickly. Of course, fans always crave the big move. They want the headline. They want the splashy signing that makes ESPN tickers light up. But the truth is, sometimes the smartest decision is the quietest. Bringing Powell back into the fold wouldn't be about hype. It would be about survival. It would be about making sure that when the Vikings step onto Soldier Field for the opener, Kirk Cousins, or whichever QB takes the snaps, has someone he can count on when Jefferson is doubled, when Addison isn't there, when Naylor isn't available. So ask yourself, SKL Nation, would you rather gamble everything on a big name past his prime? Or would you rather ensure stability with a veteran who already knows this team? Powell may not be the star fans chant for, but he could be the one who keeps the offense afloat during its most fragile moment. And yet, the temptation of a star never goes away. Because while Powell represents safety, there's another option still floating on the market. A name that once defined highlight reels. A name tied directly to Kevin O'Connell's Super Bowl past. A name that carries baggage, risk, and questions, but also carries the possibility of one last spark of greatness. Yes, Skol Nation, the final chapter in this saga is about Odell Beckham Jr. And now, Skol Nation, we come to the name that makes everyone lean forward in their chair. A name that still echoes in stadiums across the NFL. A name that once redefined what it meant to be a wide receiver in this league. Odell Beckham Jr. The question is simple, but the answer is anything but. Does OBJ still have enough left to matter? Let's rewind. Beckham's last truly productive season was 2021 when he joined Sean McVay's Rams mid-year. And who was on that staff? Kevin O'Connell, the offensive coordinator. The fit was instant. In 8 games, Beckham caught 44 passes for 537 yards and 5 touchdowns. But it was in the playoffs where he reminded the world who he was. A touchdown in the Super Bowl, another in the NFC Championship. Big plays when they mattered most. For a brief moment, the legend of OBJ was alive again, until the cruel twist of fate, an ACL tear on the biggest stage. That changed everything. Since then, the production hasn't matched the name. 2022 was lost entirely to rehab. 2023 in Baltimore showed flashes, but nothing consistent. 35 catches, 565 yards, 3 scores. Not bad, but not the dominance we remember. Now at 32 going on 33, OBJ is no longer the game-breaking force who took over highlight reels in New York. But here's the thing, Minnesota wouldn't be asking him to be that guy. They wouldn't need 200 yards or 100 catches. They'd need situational brilliance. They need those 3 or 4 plays a game where experience, route running, and sheer will tilt the outcome. Think red zone fades. Think crucial third downs. Think toe tap sideline grabs that swing momentum. OBJ can still do that. And with Jefferson demanding constant attention, Addison ready to return after suspension, and Hawkinson dominating the middle, OBJ would have the freedom to pick his spots, not carry the load. And don't forget the psychological impact. This is a fan base desperate for answers at wide receiver. Imagine OBJ jogging out in purple and gold at US Bank Stadium. The roar, the energy, the belief that suddenly floods through the building. Football isn't just about X's and O's. It's about moments. And Beckham has always been a moment maker, but the risks are very real. He's older. He's battled injuries. He hasn't produced at a star level in years. He'll demand more money than a Powell-type option. Bringing him in would be a gamble, one that could pay off spectacularly or fall flat. The front office has to ask, is the potential spark worth the risk? That's the crossroads. Powell represents stability. Beckham represents possibility. One is safe, the other is bold. And as this team stares down a season filled with uncertainty, the decision may come down to what kind of gamble the Vikings are willing to take. So here's my question to you, Skull Nation. What do you want this team to be? Do you want the steady hand that gets you through September intact? Or do you want the lightning strike? The chance of magic, the possibility of OBJ making one last iconic play to swing a season? Because this season isn't just about surviving, it's about identity. It's about who we are when everything feels unstable. And sometimes the boldest moves are the ones that define a franchise. So buckle up, like, comment, subscribe, and let your voice be heard. Should Kwesi Adofo-Mensah play it safe? Or should he roll the dice on one last spark of Odell Beckham Jr.? And remember this, every great story has one more twist. Every great season has one more surprise. Don't be shocked if the Vikings have another move waiting in the shadows. Because in Minnesota, the storm is just beginning.